What's up, guys? Welcome to the Away Game. I am your host, Coach Dan Levy. Today is April 20th, 2026, and draft week is upon us. Today, we're going to be discussing a common media narrative that's been going around, which is that this is a weak draft class. Maybe, maybe not. I'm going to give you my thoughts on that and dig into the nuts and bolts of it and why that narrative exists. I'll also discuss a growing draft day trade rumor involving the Saints and how I think there's a little more to the story than people are discussing. Lastly, we will talk about day 1 and 2 of the draft and the directions the Saints could go in those 3 rounds. Like I said, guys, draft week is upon us, and I have some exciting content in store ahead for you guys this week. A couple of former coaching colleagues of mine I plan to bring on, details to follow. As always, I appreciate everyone's support. Be sure to like and subscribe and let me know what you think in the comments, all that YouTube podcaster stuff. The show is still a baby bird, and we got to regurgitate plenty of mushy algorithm cud into her chirping mouth. You're welcome for the visual. Getting right into it, is this a weak draft class? I know this is a narrative that we're hearing everywhere. It's been something that I've been asked a few times. Well, let's step back and think about this for a second. And I guess the first hole you can punch into it is just by asking a simple question. How can this be a weak draft class and simultaneously the most athletic draft class in NFL history, or at least since 2003 when all the combine data really started to be tracked? But I wrote an article about this on my Substack. You can go check it out at The Away Game, and it has all of the stats right. So I'm going from memory here. But in 2025, 7 cornerbacks at the combine ran under a 4.4 40. In 2026, this year, that number was 15. The average 40 time for last year or for this year's safety class is over a full 1/10 of a second faster than the average over the last 20 years. And across every single position at the combine, testing numbers were up 40 time, vertical jump, broad jump, everything. Now, I'll be the first to say traits aren't the be-all, end-all. But can the most athletic class in draft history really be one of the weakest? Yes, there might only be one quarterback taken in the first round. And yes, some prospects like Carnell Tate would be overshadowed by their own teammates who are still in college. But this doesn't tell the whole story, and here's why. I think there's 2 issues at play going on. COVID eligibility has created a longer pipeline, and we're just getting to the tail end of that class of players. We're getting to the end of that, guys who gained that extra year of eligibility because of the COVID year. Combine that with the NIL, which has led to players staying in school longer, especially top prospects who maybe could enter the draft their junior year. They have no or not as much urgency to do so. So you're not getting as many underclassmen pumping up the draft class as you did in the past. All that said, the bigger, more fundamental issue for me is the evolution of the game. All evolution, draft trends, they don't start in the NFL. They trickle up. College football is now, much more than it used to be, a positionless hybrid game. Sorry, if you hear any rustling around the background, that's my dog. But he's going to have to wait. So college football is much more of a positionless hybrid game. Whereas in the past, a draft class might only have a couple of Trayden Stukes or Keontae Scotts. It now has multiple. These guys who are maybe specialized at a position that is not a core, like traditional position on the field. They're not a cornerback, they're not a safety, they're a nickel overhang type, or they're an undersized, rangy linebacker. So there's an evolution going on starting in college football, and that affects who enters the draft. But the question is, are they really lower quality football players? While the NFL's kind of catching up, you see in a defense like Brandon Staley's, which uses a lot of makes use of a lot of hybrid positionless players, and not just in a sub package that's used on 20% of third downs. It's in packages that are used for 50, 70% of snaps, almost being based out of. So the NFL is starting to catch up. It always has been. It's just, there's lag, but it's getting there. But scouting seems to be slower, especially in the media. I've a lot of respect for these kind of media scout pundits in a way. I mean, some of them. There he goes. Sorry guys, he's got an attitude problem. Anyway, the removal from the league process, which changes every year and modernizes, maybe has them sticking to old models of talent evaluation. Two things can be true at once. This class would definitely be stronger if Arch Manning were in it. But there is also a strong depth of talent that exists in this class that scouts would rate higher if they were more willing to step outside their traditional lines of thinking. So, do I buy into this being a weak class? Well, it really depends how you define weak class. It's the most athletic class in NFL history, but maybe it's just, kind of marching to the beat of its own drum. Something also that's kind of floating around in the media right now is a pretty salacious trade rumor involving the Saints. And I saw this last week, and most of you probably did as well. And the rumor is that the Saints are considering trading up into the top 5 with the Arizona Cardinals to draft Ohio State linebacker edge Arvell Reese. Now, given Mickey Loomis's history, he's pretty aggressive on draft day, especially when it goes to using draft capital to move up and get his guys. This is not a rumor that can be dismissed offhand. We can't just automatically say there are no flames beneath this smoke. Is trading up in the top 10 the direction I would go? No, not really. I don't like the idea, but if you love a player and you think that he is a transformational player, sure, you make the move, or you at least get on the phone and try. But what makes me tilt my head and squint my eyes just a little isn't the prospect that the Saints might trade up. It's the player rumored to be the target of this move. If the Saints are going to trade to the 3rd pick of the draft with the Arizona Cardinals, are they really doing it to select Arvell Reese? Really? Really? Consider who they're jumping if they move to that pick. Well, it's the Tennessee Titans. And who are the Titans rumored to be targeting? Before I go any further, all the caveats in the world here. I am not making a prediction. I am not saying that I'm right and everybody else is wrong. I'm just saying that to me, this seems like a smokescreen, especially if this trade is going to happen. And if I were a betting man, which I'm not, by the way, but if I did, I would have my money on the Saints taking Jeremiah Love at that spot if they trade up. I believe Jeremiah Love is the best player in the draft. There are some positions that I come to the more that I evaluate film and I dig into the process. This is from day one. I believe he is the best player in the 2026 draft. I see him as a Saquon Barkley type impact running back. And if I see him on the same level as the Eagles' missing Super Bowl piece from a couple years back, there might be a chance that Kellen Moore does too. So if they trade up, I am much more inclined to believe it will be for Jeremiah Love than for Arvell Reese. That brings us nicely into the final segment of this episode. Saints day 1 and day 2 strategy, specifically how their decisions decisions plural, will ripple through day 2. The Saints can basically go in one of the following directions if they stay at 8 and don't trade up or trade back, which we'll get to later. The first is taking a wide receiver. As of late, Jordan Tyson seems to be the favorite, and it's understandable why. The Saints seem to think he has a clean bill of health, along with a lot of other teams, though. So he might not be there at 8, but if he is, he could be the guy if they go receiver. But keep in mind, Lemon and Tate also went for top 30 visits with the Saints, so they're definitely in play. So that's direction 1. Direction 2 would be edge. So Ruben Bain would be the likely choice to be there at 8, or the available choice, though there's always the possibility that Bailey or even Reese could drop. Unlikely, but nothing in this top 10 of this class is settled. And the third would be staying on the defensive side, but going for a back-end player like like Caleb Downs or Mansour Delane. And of course, if somebody like Sonny Styles falls, you can always throw him in there too. So staying on the defensive side of the ball, moving to a different part of the field. And of course, there is my favorite possibility, which is Jeremiah Love. Buzz through these and talk about how each of these scenarios on day 1 will affect the Saints on day 2, or maybe even late on day 1. I'll start with the defense. If the Saints go DB, Downs or Delane, you now have the star position settled. And if it's Delane, you also have the perimeter cornerback position settled. If it's Downs, who would be my favorite pick, you don't just have the star position settled, but you also have your future all-pro safety locked in for the foreseeable future. Since you went defense in the first round, I think you're now looking to fill wide receiver ASAP on day 2. Or the next possibility, you trade up in the draft to grab somebody like Omar Cooper Jr. or Casey Concepcion, so you're trading up into the late first round. I've said it before, I love Omar Cooper Jr. He'll have a day 1 impact on the offense, and I see both of these guys as multi-role inside-outside receivers who bring that RPO attached ability, that slot awareness, that dynamic catch after the run ability. Now, I know a lot of people are saying Chris Olave needs a big X compliment, and I talked about this in my last episode. I just don't agree that that is the priority. I think you can find those guys later in the draft. What the Saints lack right now is explosiveness on offense. You're not going to get that with Elijah Surratt. You're not going to get that with Malachi Fields. You're not even really going to get it with a Denzel Boston. When you're looking at wide receiver, you're looking for somebody who is dynamic and creates plays after the catch consistently to give you more explosive plays, because I think the Saints were something like 31st in the league or 32nd league, dead last in explosive plays. You got to get that settled. Possibility 2 in this scenario is you stay at 42 and you still have some really strong wide receiver talent available. Now, the pundit/fan favorite here seems to be Chris Bell. He's the big X guy. He has incredible traits in terms of his size-speed combination. He has some run after the catch ability, though I continuously argue that he's not a savvy run after the catch guy. He's just big. He's a big kind of like thundering guy who can move to space fast. He's not going to make a lot of open field moves. I think he also is Tyler Shuck's former teammate, and a lot of people think that, hey, he's got the injury. He would be in the first round otherwise. Chris Bell at 42 is going to be a steal. Like I said in my last episode, I just don't think he's going to plug in and help you immediately like Omar Cooper would, like Casey Concepcion would, and some other guys I'm going to get to. He's coming off an ACL. I know he's going to be ready for training camp. I've talked about it before. That means that he's probably going to be doing individual drills and maybe some light individual work. And then there's also with an ACL recovery, especially in an explosive position like receiver, there's a whole mental side to it, guys. Given also the fact that he needs a lot of refinement still. His technical floor is not as high as it would need to be, even if it's healthy, for him to get on the field and be getting organic yards versus manufactured yards. It's just not there yet. it'll take a while for him to get back to 100% and integrate into the offense. And even then, you're going to be manufacturing touches for him most of the year. And he could have like a Robert Meacham type year. And I don't think that's what the Saints need in the second round. So who do I like? Who do I like? I always talk about who I don't like. You know, I don't like Chris Brosel either. I'm restating that for the record. But who do I like? Jeremy Bernard is a guy I like a lot. He's kind of Omar Cooper Jr. light. And for a while, he was the guy who I was like, yeah, 42, he's probably there. That should be the guy. But, and this is something I've come into lately, if I'm picking at 42 and we're looking at receivers, my guy now is Antonio Williams out of Clemson. He's multi-role, fantastic route guy, understands blind spots, understands, you know, all those things about how to make DB's head spin. He's great at the catch point. He competes. He's got good body control and toughness to secure the ball through contact. And he brings a lot of that run after the catch ability and even a little bit of like gadget use that you see from those other guys. Now, I always liked him, but it really wasn't until I went back and watched his 2024 film that I said, oh, this is our guy. I think he's going to be really special in the league, and he would be a great value pick if you stay at 42. And yeah, like I said, all the caveats. I know everybody thinks that we need the big body eggs because Chris Olave needs that for some reason, but the Saints need guys who can make plays with the ball in their hands, and we can worry about the other stuff later. So from there, you go Downs or Delane round 1. You go Antonio Williams round 2. If you're going by positional need before day 2 is over, I think you got to look to address edge. So in round 3, I think some guys who I project well in the league and think they're going to be really good and kind of, I wouldn't call them sleepers necessarily because I think the third round's more or less where they belong. But who could possibly outperform their draft position are Romello Hyde out of Texas Tech and Kieran Crawford out of Auburn. I really like Hyde, especially as a DPR, a designated pass rusher. He's got the short arms disease like half the edge guys in this class, but the dude can fire off the ball and bend. He has a really refined toolbox of pass rush moves. He played across from David Bailey. He's also got some of that chest piece in him where you can move him around. You can run sim pressure with him. You can drop him off into coverage, and I think he'd have an instant impact. Let's get to the next scenario. Let's say the Saints go wide receiver, and let's put running back in the same bucket. They differ a bit because if they go Jeremiah Love, I still think you're considering wide receiver in round 2. So let's just, for the sake of argument, say they go offense. Let's say you go Tyson, Lemon, Tate, or Love. And now edge and DB become your priority on day 2. I'm less inclined to trade up if someone falls now that we have our receiver, aside from a couple of players who I think would maybe be worth it if they really started to fall to that 27, 28, or even 33, 34 range. And the first is cornerback Chris Johnson out of San Diego State. I think Johnson is a sleeper. I think that he is a very good corner who has snuck into the late first round but could end up, being a true Pro Bowl #1 corner in the NFL. I mean, he's probably being slated for late day 1, like in that 28 to 32 range. But if he falls into day 2, I think you're on the phone. Same goes for Cassius Howell, the outside linebacker edge guy out of Texas A&M. Same story. If he slips into day 2 or the very end of day 1, I think you start to consider moving up because he's another one of those. He's probably the best of those kind of chess piece edge guys that would be great in Brandon Staley's defense. Now, if you stay at 42, both of those players are probably gone. At DB, I think D'Angelo Pons out of Indiana, if he's there, he's an underrated guy too, who's going to outperform his draft position. If he was a few inches taller, he'd be getting drafted in the top half of the first round. He's an absolute dog, and I think he's going to have a honey badger type impact in the slot. Traden Stukes is another guy who I absolutely love and fits into that positionless mold that I was talking about before in the first segment. At 42, I can't really see him being the best player available on the Saints board, but he is a dog. I really like Traden Stukes specifically for that star role, and I think even more than, say, Keontae Scott, I think Traden Stukes has that versatility to also play corner or play safety. I think I talked about this in my last episode. He's kind of reminds me as a much more athletic, better version of PJ Williams, former Saints DB. At edge, if you're sitting at 42, Cassius Howell and TJ Parker, who is that other edge that's kind of in that range, are likely gone. So what this probably becomes, if you're lucky, because both of these guys could go earlier as well, it hopefully becomes an R. Mason Thomas versus Malachi Lawrence conversation. I'll dig into those two players more when we have Coach Brooks on Wednesday, but I have a lot to say about that. Now, getting to the next scenario, and this is my ultimate pitch to the Saints. So Mickey Loomis, if you're watching, hear me out. Up front, I love that the Saints have the 8th pick in the draft. Not just because I think there will be some very good talent available there, but I love it because it presents a tremendous opportunity to do something Mickey Loomis rarely ever does, and that is to trade back in the first round. So let's take a moment and let's list out who is a fit at the 8th pick for the Saints. So there's Arvell Reese, David Bailey, not my choice, but he is in the conversation. Sonny Styles, Ruben Bain, Mansur Delane, Caleb Downs, Jordan Love, Jordan Tyson, Mekhi Lemon, Cardell Tate. Sorry, I said Jordan Love. Jeremiah Love. A lot of names, guys. A lot of names. ADHD brain to handle. Anyway, that's 10 players. So off that list alone, you should have 3 available at pick 8. Now, if you throw in Mendoza, who's going to be the number 1 pick, that bumps that number up to 4 players who should be available at 8. And if you throw in offensive tackle like Malinoa, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, guys. I'm very bad with this, but that number goes from 4 to 5. So you've got 5 players available at 8 who are all kind of in that same cluster on your board. Okay, so now let's say Miami wants to move up. Maybe they want to take a Ruben Bain. It could be Mansur Delane, and they want to jump KC to get those guys, or a wide receiver. They offer you the 11th and 43rd pick to do so. If that happens, I think you take that offer. You drop back 3 picks where you got 4 or 5 options who are all in a similar area on your board. So you're still going to have, even if there's no like outlier pick within those next 3 picks, you're still going to have a couple options at 11. And you now also have draft capital to trade back into the first round, to trade back up into it, and get a guy who fell, and you don't lose both of your day 2 picks. Like, I don't have the Jimmy Johnson draft chart in front of me. I'm just saying, guys, you have more to work with. And now you can go get the receiver that you want, or if an edge or a DB falls that you like. I'm not saying 100% that you do this, and just because you haven't done it before, doesn't mean that you can't do it now. All right, guys, that's it for the show today. Again, I appreciate everybody coming along on this ride. I'm going to keep this content coming all week, every day. Be sure to like and subscribe. Throw any comments or questions that you have down below. And yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Who dat?